Internet. This is Riddler. Welcome you to another edition of Wrestling Fanfic Theater. I wasn't here last time, so I don't know what the fuck we're doing.
Oh, you missed the greatest fic ever, where Kane got pregnant by X-Pac.
So let me everyone introduce themselves, please.
I'm Slick Rob.
I'm some guy I'm supposed to edit.
I'm Rock Cannon, goddammit. I hate you guys for roping me into this.
You love it, Rob.
So we've got 3 separate fanfictions to read to you tonight. We've got
4, I think.
4?
4, I think?
3 or 4.
It's either 3 or 4. We don't know yet. I know at least 3 that we've got to read to you tonight. Well, I may as well give you the titles now. There's The Ginger in the Kitchen, which our lead gentleman kindly picked out for us. What's yours called, Rob?
Addicted.
Addicted. Then I've got one called Lost, and if there is a 4th one, obviously Rock10 would have probably picked that one. Have you picked one for us, Rock10, or no?
No, I didn't pick one.
Okay, so we've got 3. Which one would we like to read first?
Ginger in the Kitchen, since we're prepared for that one.
Ginger in the Kitchen, because we're prepared for that. Okay, so the way
narrated by Mark Henry. No.
Rock10 is going to narrate kindly for us, since he didn't pick a story. I'm going to be doing the voice of Wade Barret, and Rob, since he's from the South, is going to do Heath Slater. That's the only reason we picked him to do that. He does a terrible...
They're both from Virginia. One just has a West on it.
Would you believe that Rob has a terrible Southern accent?
So this story is by an author known as Dark Canaanite.
That's a great accent.
Dark Canaanite. And this guy has his picture is, I think, it's Sheamus kissing.
I
thought that was Christian with a mustache.
Nah, that's Sheamus, but I don't know who he's kissing. Is that Punk?
There's a lot of shaved head guys in WWE.
Is that Punk? It looks like it could be Punk.
Yeah, it could be Punk.
Might be Punk. The description for this is slash in capital letters. Man on man loving. Don't like, don't read. It's that easy.
Okay, we're all leaving then.
Yep,
bye.
Then show up later.
So, Rock10, when you are ready, please, begin to read.
I didn't read this beforehand.
You're doing... remind me again, you're doing the voice of Wade Barret, Riddler?
I'm doing Wade Barret. Rob is doing Heath Slater.
Okay. It had been a long, long night filled nothing... already typos here, because they're missing a word. It had been a long, long night filled with nothing but tossing and turning, as one of his rare bouts of insomnia had taken hold of him and wouldn't let go. Wade had heard each member of his team enter the large spacious home they shared, and each one's voice had held the telltale slur of too much alcohol. As the sun peeked over the horizon, he ran his hand through his musk-ebony locks, and he slipped into his favorite pair of warm pajama pants before heading down to the kitchen in search for food.
I've got to wear my PJs.
Hoping that with a full stomach he might be able to find some sleep in the early dawn hours. The house was quiet as he slipped down the stairs, and it gave him time to admire the rose tint of the rising sun against the eggshell white walls where the windows let the faint light in. Eggshell white walls?
Yes, that is the color.
Okay. Apparently he wasn't the only one that thought food would be a boon to them, because the closer he got to his destination, he heard shuffling and the squeak of the refrigerator door on its worn hinges as it opened and closed. Wondering which one was up at this time after the night they had, he moved over and looked over the side of the cabinets.
Thankful
for the open plan of the kitchen that had the cabinets making a U in the center with low walls behind them to allow anyone in the kitchen to see the rest of the first floor from the back porch to the game room off to the right. They're sure doing a lot of describing of their place here. Standing with his back to him as he put bread into the toaster stood Heath Slater, the bright red hair smooth and undisturbed by time on a pillow and meaning one of two things. Either hadn't Either Heath hadn't been to bed yet, or he'd fallen asleep face first.
I sleep on my face.
Wade considered clearing his throat to announce his presence to the other superstar, but as he opened his mouth to do so, he decided against it and just let his eyes roam over the other man.
Oh god.
Oh, God. It's already going into that territory. Why?
It was something that he'd done since he was younger, watching and reading people when they didn't know it. It was his secret weapon that gave...
What the fuck?
But you're telling me that Wade Barret is a voyeur?
I'm watching you pee.
It was his secret weapon that gave him an edge over people whether or not they realized it. He was standing with his legs splayed slightly and was only wearing worn flannel pants. The red and blue tartan pattern stretched tight over his backside, a telling sign that they were what he felt the most comfortable in. With a mental groan, Wade pictured moving up behind Heath and skimming them down as he fondled and groped the redhead.
Come on, Rocky, you gotta keep a straight face, man.
There was something about Heath that just begged for someone to molest him, and Wade wanted to be that someone.
That's what happens in the Nexus.
So that's how Wade recruited the Nexus. He got them. He put them all in his white panel van.
On silent feet, he moved around the edge of the counters to lean against them with his arms crossed over his chest. With a tiny smirk on his face, he cleared his throat, biting back a snicker as Heath jumped and whirled around, almost losing his footing and taking a header into the shiny tile.
You're up early after a night of debauchery, Slater.
There was no shenanigans on my side.
Heath scowled as he turned back to his toast to keep it from burning.
Really? That wasn't you and Gabriel breaking the mattress this morning at 4:45?
Reduce to listening at keyholes.
Come on,
Barret.
Hello?
Yeah, he said it.
Reduce.
Repeat it. Repeat it.
I'll say it again. Reduce to listening at keyholes now, Barret.
Heath shot his back as he turned around and took a bite of his toast, crunching softly.
Your pretty boy Scott doesn't come. Your pretty boy Scott doesn't come around anymore. Maybe you found out what a self-righteous asshole you are.
Who's Scott?
Hey, I'm sorry, my accent is slipping, but wait. Drew McIntyre and Wade Barret. What?
The European connection.
Wade, I've changed my ways.
Kelly!
I've changed my ways. I like men.
Maybe that's why Kelly was displeased with him. He was always
Maybe that's
having
why he
gay
fell in
sex.
love with. Maybe why he fell in love with Kelly Barrett.
No, I think this is why Kelly wasn't pleased with him, because he was always having gay sex with Wade Barret.
Kelly, I changed my ways.
I'm no longer sleeping with men, Kelly.
I stopped screwing Wade Barret, Kelly.
Remember, Kelly, you're either next us or against us.
The dig stung. It was true that Drew hadn't been around as much lately. He was instead wrapped around his wife's little finger, and it did hurt a bit to know that he'd been replaced in Drew's life. Still, Wade wasn't going to let it show that it bit deep. He shrugged his shoulders and pinned Heath with his patented I could care less stare.
Drew has always been his old man, and you didn't understand my question.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think Heath was being a black woman at that time.
Mm-hmm, girlfriend.
Heath mumbled as he around his mouthful of toast.
Did your mother not teach you any manners?
You leave my mama out of this. I mean, I have them. I just don't use them in front of people who have less class than a pig in mud.
He shot back after he swallowed his bite.
Don't you have someone else to go bother? Skip or Tarver? I'm sure they want to hear you bark at them after the night they had.
So all the Nexus is involved in this now?
One
So
giant
wait,
gay orgy.
Ryback, and Michael Tarver.
Oh, dear God. Wade pushed away from the counters and pinned Heath against the ones at his back. His hands flat on the countertop and his face mere inches away from Heath's. The smell of Heath's toast floated past his face as Heath exhaled, his eyes blazing as his lips curled into a scowl.
Back off, Barret. We ain't in the ring. I don't have to listen to you.
Heath snarled as he pushed against Wade's chest. The shove only moved Wade back a bit, and he laughed as he grabbed Heath's hands as it spun the redhead around, pinning him back against the counter and pinning his hands to the cool marble top. With a growl, he pressed up against Heath's back, his nose buried in the pleasantly fragrant red locks.
Get off of me.
He snarled as he pushed back against Wade in a bid to try and dislodge him.
I think you need a reminder of who's the boss around here, Slater. You seem to have forgotten.
Wade bit down on Heath's exposed collarbone, chuckling at the small whine he heard in response.
What was that, Slater?
Fuck you, Barret.
Wade bit down again, this time grinding against Heath slowly, eliciting another moan from the redheaded man. He let one hand go and slid it down the flat plane of Heath's stomach and into the pajama pants, rubbing at the thickening flesh.
It would appear that you want to. You always were a slut, Slater. I could tell from the moment I laid eyes on you.
Wade's fingers curled around the hot shaft and started to pump slowly as he nosed aside Heath's hair and planted gentle kisses to the back of his neck before he bit down on the space between Heath's shoulder blades. The noises that Heath were making were like a drug to Wade, and he rocked against the other man as he worked Heath's pants down, his hands roaming over the slowly heating skin as he mouthed and nipped in Heath's neck and shoulders. Fuck you guys for making me read this.
You're the slut here, Barret. Wanting to do this where anyone could walk in and catch us.
Heath moaned airily as he thrust into Wade's hand, his own gripping the counter for support.
This is mine, okay. After the night that the others had, I doubt that they will even want to move until this evening.
So wait, was there a Nexus orgy going on?
Apparently. In fact, it's almost as if we were alone in this house.
Wade purred as he nipped at Heath's earlobe. From somewhere in the house came a loud snore as if to give credence to Wade's words, and he smirked as he freed himself from his own sleeping pants and slid his throbbing erection between the cleft of Heath's ass and rocking slowly. The friction had them both moaning, and Wade tangled one hand in Heath's hair while the other lined himself up with Heath's entrails and pushed slowly.
Son of a bitch!
Heath hollered, past the point to caring if they were caught or not, as the pain of the intrusion slammed through him.
A little warning would have been nice.
He panted as he pulled against the hole in his hair to drop his head.
Surprise.
Wade whispered as he rocked slowly, pulling nearly all the way out before sinking back in.
Remember, it's not rape if you yell surprise.
The pace was slow as they moved, Wade reaching down with his free hand and stroking Heath in time with the pace. God damn it. Till the head growled at him to pick up the pace or to let him show Wade how it was done. Nathan, how the hell did you read the last story with Ryback? With a smirk, Wade sunk his teeth into Heath's shoulder and started to hammer in and out, driving the slightly smaller man into the counter hard enough to rattle the silverware in the drawer.
Look, son of a bitch, Barret. Harder, faster, you limey Brit.
He stuttered as he reached back and drug his nails. Oh, I'm assuming dug his nails down Wade's hip, leaving large ragged marks behind.
Come on, Wade.
He hisses.
Make me scream. Darling, Wade.
Make me scream.
Darling.
Don't make me mad.
Don't make me scream!
He panted as he thrust into Wade's hand faster in a bid to push himself over the edge.
Wade, please.
Once the world tumbled out, it was if a floodgate had been unleashed and a torrent of semi-coherent begging and cursing began.
Oh, fuck. Wade, please. Come on, Wade. Don't fucking stop. Please. Wade, please.
He was pretty sure that even though the others were asleep, if Heath got any louder, they'd be wandering down to see what was going on. But even that didn't stop him from acquiescing to Heath's demands, and soon his loud, throaty growls played undercurrent to Heath's begging. Wade's orgasm was building in his stomach, and he matched the pace of his pumping hand to his thrusts. Heath's rising pitch telling him that the redhead was close to getting off.
Come for me, Slater. Defile these cabinets with your kisses. I want to see it running down the wood when I'm done with you.
Wade.
He practically screamed as he clenched around Wade and released, his body trembling and milking every drop of Wade's orgasm from him. Heath's name was a mantra as Wade pressed his face into Heath's neck and kissed him gently as he came down from his body trembling high. For what seemed like forever, they stayed that way, intimately joined, and Heath turning his head so they could trade sleepy, lazy kisses.
You know, I have a nice large pillow top mattress that is a hell of a lot comfier than this.
Heath chuckled as he shifted a bit, rubbing against Wade. With a non-committal grunt, Wade pulled away and started up the stairs, pulling Heath with him. Once they were closeted in Heath's room with the air conditioner turned on high and sheet pulled over the both of them, they fell asleep almost instantly, completely oblivious to Darren Young's disgusted cry about the mess left in the cabin.
Come on, man. I gotta clean this.
You know how much this is gonna cost to clean? Millions of dollars, millions of dollars, millions of dollars.
Oh my God.
Barret, Heath Slater, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus Christ.
I've got one now. If you don't mind.
Go ahead. I'll read mine last.
So this is.
So are you glad you read that? I picked that. Remember?
This is going to get a hell of a lot ickier.
Oh no.
Addicted by Miss X Anon. Summary. Michael Cole can't resist the Viper. MM/Dubcon.
Oh no.
Addicted. Michael Cole sat in catering alone in the crowd as always. He was surrounded by divas and superstars, techies, other commentators from the various brands, and quite a few others who played some role or another in making everything come together. It's almost like he's not alone. And they all had something that Cole didn't. A friend to sit with them and keep them company before the show.
I'm such a lonely man.
He supposed he deserved it. It wasn't like he was the friendliest or nicest guy around. But even so, that made no difference for most of the others. The Miz, widely considered to be the most annoying superstar on the roster, had people surrounding him, listening to him go on and on about himself. Really? The Miz isn't friends with Michael Cole. Okay.
Makes sense.
I guess even the Miz has standards. But everyone avoided Cole like the plague, and he'd learned not to try and force his company on any of them, unless he wanted to find out just what their oversized muscles were capable of. So he sat alone, picking at his food, and talking himself up, complimenting himself so that he would be able to go out and do his job without having a meltdown. The last thing he needed was to be fired from another job.
What job was he fired from?
I have no idea. When the chair in front of his scraped out and someone sat across from him, he could barely contain his shock and fear. He looked up to see who it was, and was met with the piercing gaze of the Viper himself, and he nearly choked on his food. It had been a long time since he'd had any off-camera conduct with the man. Since that time, he had changed a lot. He'd become terrifying to be around, and he'd begun to take his voice's gimmick more seriously than could possibly be considered healthy. And he had chosen to sit with Cole, of all people. Not with his good friend John Cena, who was having a friendly debate with Punk while Sheamus sat by smirking that trouble-loving smirk of his.
So, Orton and Cena are friends?
I guess. Not with the divas who would have fawned and cooed over him basking in his presence. No, he'd bypassed it all to join Cole, who could only sit by and stare in shock. There was a silence between them that was only magnified by the chatter surrounding them. Randy's gaze bore into Cole like a predator sizing up his prey, misspelled, by the way. And Cole flinched back in his seat, attempting to shrink away to nothing. He knew he couldn't run, couldn't leave, even though you're surrounded by people. If Randy wanted something from him, he'd get it, and there was nothing Cole could do or say to avoid it. You know, despite the fact that you're surrounded by security and men who are just as strong or not stronger than Randy Orton. "Hello, Randy," he said, trying to sound confident, though his body language contradicted it completely. He got no reply other than a twitch of the lips and a quirk of the brow. Cole fidgeted in his seat, not needing to ask the other man what he wanted or why now. For nearly a year, he'd been in a relationship with one Cody Rhodes. Whoa, that doesn't go there. Whoa. Okay. And in the last few weeks, the relationship had gone sour and ultimately ended. That left Randy alone, and he did not fare well when he was lonely. So he came to Cole, the one man he knew who wouldn't say no, and who couldn't tell anyone about what would go on later that night in his room. It was to Randy's advantage to choose someone who had no friends and no one to even talk to. You know, despite the fact that he could go to the fucking police. Thoughts of it all weighed heavy on his mind all throughout the show, causing him to be much quieter than usual. Oh, so this had a positive impact on Cole. He knew he'd catch hell for it a little later, but he couldn't pull his mind away from Orton and the things that the man had in store for him. After the show, when the fans were filing out and the roster was packing up to go back to their hotel rooms, Cole left as quickly as he could, avoiding everyone as he went. He slid into his car and threw his head back against the headrest. His nerves were on edge, his entire body shaking, and he wasn't sure whether it was from fear or anticipation. Whatever it was, it made it incredibly difficult to drive, but he eventually made it to his hotel and raced to the elevator. When he finally made it to his room, he closed his door and locked all three of the locks before breathing a sigh of relief. It was short-lived, however, because before he knew it, he was being spun around and slammed into the door hard enough to knock him slightly silly. Randy captured his mouth in a hard, bruising kiss. He bit at Cole's bottom lip, splitting it and causing them both to taste his blood as it washed over their tongues. When he'd had enough of the light stuff, he dragged him over to the bed, which was already set up for the games he had planned. Question. How did Randy get into his room? I imagine they don't share a room. So how did Randy get into the room? This is a very convenient sized plot hole. Anyway. Oh god, this is about to get a lot worse. Cole's wrists were strapped with belts to the bedposts, and Randy pulled his legs apart so that he was spread eagle face down in the pillow as the blood rushed from his brain to his groin. He hated that he enjoyed this, that he wanted to feel Randy's hands running over him, to feel the other man inside him, to feel dominated, possessed. The only thing these little trysts lacked was the feeling that he was loved, that Randy needed him. It was always there in the back of his mind, nagging at him when all he wanted was to enjoy the few moments of contact he was able to glean from the superstar. Randy liked it rough, and he liked to mark his partner, make them his own. So he shit on his chest. No, I'm kidding.
God damn you, Rob.
I imagine Randy Orton marks all of his territory like that.
I'm gonna shit in his bag.
Okay. So, the first hard slap of his belt elicited a small scream from Cole that was muffled by the pillows. Slowly, the screams became moans as Randy began to run his hands over Cole's body while trailing kisses over his back.
Oh my god.
The first bite was more of a gentle nip, but they got harder and stronger as Randy went. But Cole enjoyed it, probably more than any sane person should.
I like the fact they just said he's crazy.
Yeah. Finally, Randy had had enough of toying around with the smaller man. I've had enough! And Cole found himself being driven into with no preparation or lubrication at all. He liked it that way, the feel of Randy right up against him inside of him, rubbing him raw. Even though that would probably hurt like a bitch.
It does.
It was a physical manifestation of what the man did to him mentally and emotionally. He scars me mentally, he scars me emotionally. I like it that he elicits the most pain out of me possible physically. As Randy's thrusts began to become sharper and more erratic, Cole's heart dropped, even as he found himself nearing the edge. It was coming to an end. He was so close, and there was nothing he wanted more than for this to not end. But all too soon he found himself coming hard enough to make spots take over his vision. And not long after, Randy was filling him up while growling loudly. All was still and silent for a moment until Randy pulled out of him, leaving him strapped to the bed as he went to take a shower. The familiar sense of shame and self-loathing washed over Cole as he lay on the bed, arms asleep and his body aching and used. He could hear Randy in the shower, talking to people who weren't there as the water pounded down over him. So the voices tell him to fuck Michael Cole, okay. The noise had a lulling effect on Cole, and though he tried to wait it out, the next thing he knew, he was waking up to his wrists being released. Randy loomed over him for a moment longer before he was gone, letting the door slam as he left. How the fuck did he get the key? Anyways, Cole slowly found his legs, and the feeling returned to his arms, and he made his way to the shower, knowing that no matter how long he stood under the scalding water, and no matter how hard he scrubbed, he wouldn't be able to wash him.
RKO to nowhere.
Oh.
Oh man.
That was absolutely terrible.
I know. Oh my god.
Someone read something that'll make me feel slightly better about myself.
So, I have a story called Lost, by Hart Deniges. I don't know. It's Hart Denijs.
So, is Cena and Punk gonna get lost on an island with a smoke?
Well, that's what I'm going to read the summary. A series of unfortunate events and foul play leave CM Punk and Cena stranded on a deserted island after a plane crash. What happens when two men who hate each other are left alone on an island? Read and find out. Rated M.
So, I'm imagining there's gonna be a smoke monster, and they're gonna open the hatch, and
And
Well,
then
this is
it's gonna be magic, and then they ruin the entire series.
Well, this is 8 chapters long, so I'll read the first chapter, and after I've read it, I'll ask you guys whether you want to hear more or whether you want to save it for a future show. So, here we go. We'll start off with the disclaimer.
Riddler, link it in the chat.
What?
Link Link the story.
Link the story in the chat. Hold on, then. God damn you, man. You can edit this stuff out, can't you, Ali?
I could.
And you will.
I probably won't.
Fuck you. There you go. So, as I was saying, yes, this is a mature story. It's 8 chapters long. It involves John Cena and CM Punk. And this has been favorited, just to throw a random fact in there. This story, published 7th of the 5th, 2012, and it's been favorited 33 times. Follows, it's got 53 follows, and I'll read the first chapter and we'll see how it goes. Disclaimer. Chapter 1, disclaimer. I own absolutely nothing. If I did, the WWE would turn into a weekly episodic program very similar in nature to the Magic Mike movie, but with less storyline and more striping. This was the story that was running through my head towards the end of Ghost of You. But I've been so busy this summer, I'm just now starting it. One thing I want to let you guys know. I have done some research for this story, but I find that it was a massive undertaking, and I didn't have the time. Some aspects of the story are going to be technically incorrect. If this bothers you, then please don't read this fic, or don't feel that you need to let me know about the incorrect technical aspects, because I already do. Remember that this is a work of fiction, and I don't do this for a living. I'm a busy college student. Nice guy.
Who writes this?
Who writes this? Answer your phone, dumbass. Liz Cena anxiously bit her thumbnail as she waited for him to answer his phone. She sighed in relief when there came a hello from the other end of the line, but that relief was quickly replaced with rage. What took you so fucking long to answer your phone, dumbass? Liz.
So, in this story, just like in real life, John Cena's now ex-wife is a raging bitch.
Yes. What took you so fucking long to answer your phone, dumbass? Liz all but screamed into the phone. I was working on putting our plan into action. These things take time. You need to trust me to get the job done. The man's voice had an annoyed edge to it. Trust you?
I mean,
Really?
I know you want me to put Edge's feet in cement and sink him into the Pacific, but it's gonna take a while.
Trust you? Really? This is the third time that you've tried to kill that philandering little bastard. They say that the third time is the charm, but you should understand if I have my doubts. Do you realize how important it is that he dies? If he's able to divorce me, I'm going to be out in my ass without a single penny. And do you know what that means? You won't get paid. We have to kill him before he changes his will so I can live in luxury for the rest of my life. Liz panted in excited anger.
So wait, Liz isn't married to Cena in this.
No. He's divorcing her, and he's going to change his will, and she wants someone to kill him. Yeah, I know. He's a hard bastard to kill, but I have a good feeling about it this time.
Oh wait.
Liz.
Oh, she is married to Cena. She's trying to kill Cena. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, Liz narrowed her eyes and then sat down in a chair next to her pool. And why is that? What is your plan? John has a Make-A-Wish event today, so he can't take the plane to Japan with the rest of the roster. So WWE has chartered him another flight. I've seen the plane, and I almost mistook it for a pack of gum. This thing looks like a death trap. All I have to do is mess with a few things to ensure it goes down somewhere in the Pacific, and no one will question why. Liz's eyebrows rose for a moment before going back down. She thought over his plan for a few moments and came to the conclusion that it was brilliant. How are you going to make sure the plane goes down? Well, I've poisoned both the pilot and co-pilot with a poison that won't kill them until they're in the middle of the ocean. How? How? How?
Slow-acting poison?
I've also
But
messed with the plane's little
even then, that's like, you can't really predict necessarily when the poison's going to take effect.
Oh, this part's the gold part, though. I've also messed with the plane's little black box, the part you can never mess with. So all I have to do is press a button from here, and then it will explode. They'll never be able to find John's sorry ass without that data.
No. You can't destroy the black box.
Exactly. Cackling to herself, Liz smiled an evil, twisted smile. You are so brilliant, but make sure you get the job done, understand? Yeah, I understand. You just sit back and practice that fake cry of yours because you're going to need it. With that, the man hung up on Liz, so she ended the call on her end and placed the phone on the end of the table beside her. She glanced up at the sky and smiled. John was going to pay for filing for divorce, more than he ever thought he would. People often asked him if fulfilling these wishes ever depressed him. John could understand why they asked such a question because the Make-A-Wish kids were most of the time suffering from life-threatening illnesses. To John, fulfilling wishes was probably the best thing about being a WWE superstar. There was nothing that could uplift his mood more than making a child's life better and making them forget about their troubles, if only for a few minutes. Noticing that the SUV he had been riding in hand just arrived, at the airport, John moved to collect his shoulder bag before opening the door. The driver had already opened the trunk and was working on getting his luggage out. John went over and helped him, which seemed to shake the poor man a great deal. Shock the poor man a great deal. Hey, thanks for driving me around today. You were a very good driver. John tipped his baseball hat at the driver and flashed him his dimpled smile before turning and walking into the airport. Just the thought of John Cena smiling, I don't know why, that makes me laugh. The airport...
Cena wears his ring gear out in public.
Apparently so. The airport wasn't as busy as it could have
Why
been.
not?
Since it was getting into the late night hours. But John liked it that way. He loved his fans, but sometimes it was nice to just be able to get checked in and through security without being surrounded by fans wanting pictures and autographs. He needed time to breathe. Sometimes. He checked in and was through security in no time. All he had to do now was find his gate, and then he could catch a few minutes of sleep before having to board the plane. After about 10 minutes, finding his gate was proving to be a bit of a problem. After being with the WWE for 10 years, he was familiar with most of the airports in the country and some abroad. But he was having issues finding this gate. Tired and frustrated, John decided that he could part with his man card and stopped to ask an airport employee for directions. I'm gonna lose my... You're gonna lose your man card by asking for directions? What? Okay.
I've heard that before, but it's still stupid.
Stupid. The woman looked...
It's the old stereotype.
Men don't ask for directions.
Men don't ask for directions. The woman looked confused for a moment and thought for an even longer moment before realization dawned on her face. It's been a while since I've seen anyone sent to this gate, if it can even be called that. I'm not even going to try and describe how to get there, so please follow me. John was a little unsettled by this statement. How were they sending him to Japan? By pigeon? John silently followed after the woman, and after going down many
There's
flights...
going to be a giant pigeon that picks you up and flies you there.
After going down many flights of stairs and twisting corridors, John honestly wondered if she was taking him to Narnia. He was proven wrong, though, when she stopped in front of a rickety-looking door that had his gate number sloppily painted on it. Good luck and have a nice flight, was all the woman said to him before leaving. Staring at the door for a few moments, John wondered if she had somehow made a mistake. The door looked like it led to a broom closet, not a waiting area to board a flight. Gathering his courage, John opened the door and surveyed what was inside. It was honestly about the size of a broom closet, but had another door opposite the one John had just opened. From the window at the top of that door, John saw that it led straight onto the tarmac. Looking around the small room, John took in the two small benches that were on the opposite walls. One was occupied by a man with a scruffy beard, a dirty, torn Cubs baseball cap, and Beats headphones covering his ears. CM Punk. John stood silently in the doorway, not moving a muscle. Everyone on the roster knew not to put him and Punk in the same closed space together, unless they wanted World War III. Punk hated, all in capitals, John Cena with the passion of 1,000 suns, and took every opportunity that was afforded him to let John know that fact. Not one to take being treated as such, John would retort back, thus starting an argument of epic proportions. There was one thing that no one on the roster knew, however. John Cena wanted Punk. Not his blood, not his painful death, but all of him. His luscious body, intelligent mind, and Bard's personality.
So this is a slash fic.
Some might call John's feelings pure masochism, but he thought of it as infatuation. One of the reasons, very small reasons, why he had filed for divorce from Liz was Punk.
Oh
He knew
my god.
he knew he would never have a chance with Punk, but his obsession distracted him and had harmed his marriage. It wasn't fair to Liz to have her husband be lusting and pining after someone else, especially another man. Liz didn't know about his feelings toward Punk, but she had often accused him of having someone on the side. He wished. John was pulled from his thoughts when Punk looked up from his comic book. At first, his expression was shocked, but then his extreme dislike took over, and he leveled a scathing look at John. "What the hell are you doing here?" Punk all but growled at John. If someone could spontaneously combust from a look, John felt like he would be engulfed in flames at this moment. "This is my flight. What the hell are you doing here?" John dropped his bags in front of the other bench and then sat down. Punk narrowed his eyes and his lip curled in an ugly sneer. "Wonderful! I have to deal with your sunny personality for 12 fucking hours. They fucking oversold the plane, and the businessmen who had also bought my seat got here before me, so they stuck me on this flight." "Gotta love airlines these days," John said absently as he moved his baseball cap lower on his forehead to hide his smile. Maybe he was a glutton for punishment, but he relished the few moments that he could have with Punk alone, even if it meant being insulted the entire time. All conversation halted at that point, and the two men sat in silence. Punk continued to read his comic book, and John messed with his phone. The room was completely silent, except for the almost silent breaths of the two men. Not used to such silence, John began to fidget and became anxious. Breaking the silence, John asked, "So what are you reading?" Punk looked up at John with an annoyed look on his face. "Don't even try to make small talk, Cena. You just sit there like a good little Boy Scout and be quiet." Punk turned his attention back to his comic book. "Well, I got told, didn't I?" John thought to himself. He had never understood why Punk hated him so much. He'd always been nice and cordial with Punk when they had first met, and then Punk had seemed to develop a deep hatred for him. Their relationship, if one could even refer to it as such, had deteriorated from there. What had he ever done that was so bad to Punk? "Why do you hate me so much?" John couldn't keep the question from spilling from his lips from the speed with which Punk snapped his head up. With surprised expression, John could tell that he had caught Punk off guard. Punk stared at John for a few seconds before he opened his mouth to reply. He was interrupted before any words could come out of his mouth, however. A man wearing a captain's uniform opened the door that led onto the tarmac. "Hey, we're ready for you guys to board if you'll follow me, please." Both John and Punk gathered their things and followed the man. "Punk may have gotten out of the answering my question this time, but he'll have to answer eventually," John thought to himself as he walked out of the little room. Punk wasn't walking in front of him, and John couldn't help but check him out from behind. He wasn't given many. He wasn't given. He wasn't given many opportunities to do so, and he wasn't passing this one up. Punk was wearing his usual loose-fitting jeans that made his ass look non-existent. John knew it was there. Punk's finger made sure that he was well aware, perky and round and luscious Punk's ass. There were many times in the last year that John had to sit on his hands while Punk was in grabbing distance to keep him from copping a feel. He honestly didn't understand why a man that made as much as Punk did still wore jeans that looked he had bought them in high school. John supposed that it was beneficial to his sanity that Punk did wear those old jeans. "You've got to be fucking kidding me." Punk's voice pulled John's attention from his ass to the sight that was in front of him. Upon taking in the plane, in quote marks, in front of him, John had to reiterate Punk's statement. They were sending them to Japan by pigeon after all. The plane was a jet, but it was very small. John quickly counted how many windows it had, and he only counted 10. How in the hell was this plane going to be able to make a 12-hour flight? It looked like it had to have a 2 to 3 hour range. There must be some mistake. We're supposed to be flying to Japan," John said to the captain. Not missing a beat, the pilot explained, "This is a global private jet, meaning it is a very small aircraft, but it has a large enough range to fly to Japan or Europe from the United States." With that, the pilot took both John and Punk's bags and placed them in a small compartment underneath the plane. "You can board now. We'll be leaving shortly. The co-pilot and I have to finish some last-minute checks, and then we'll be on our way. The flight attendant was not able to make this flight, but help yourselves to any beverages and snacks." The pilot dashed up the few stairs that led into the plane and disappeared into the cockpit. John looked over at Punk, who looked over at him, and from the look of his face, John could tell that the pilot had convinced Punk of the range of the aircraft about as much as he had John. Not at all. Both men hesitated for a moment before John moved to board the plane. His logic was that the WWE wouldn't put their two biggest moneymakers on a plane that wasn't safe, and they had never put him in harm's way before. Punk seemed to come to the same conclusion when he followed John onto the plane. The plane looked even smaller from the inside. There was a small kitchenette area where John assumed the aforementioned beverages and snacks were. I gotta say, the use of language is quite good in this. The plane looked like it could comfortably sit 10 people and uncomfortably 15. The chairs were large, nicely padded, and covered tan leather. John sat down in one of the seats at the front, so he had room to spread out. But Punk moved past him and sat at the very back of the plane. Typical, John thought to himself. John watched out of the corner of his eyes as Punk settled down into his seat and placed his headphones on his head. If John listened hard enough, he could hear the faintest sound of heavy metal music. Punk put his seat back and then returned to the comic. John waited until after takeoff to get as comfortable as Punk. The takeoff itself wasn't surprisingly smooth, which helped to assuage John's assuage John's lingering distrust of the plane's ability to fly. John settled into flight with about a half an hour into it and began to feel sleepy. Not seeing any reason why he shouldn't pass the 12 hours it took to fly to Japan by sleeping, John closed his eyes and quickly dozed off. About 6 hours later, John was awakened by the sound of violent retching. Startled, John looked behind him and saw that the co-pilot was bent over the small kitchenette sink, vomiting. John quickly stood up and went over to him to try and help or do something for the poor guy. He only had time to touch his shoulder before the man collapsed at his feet and started convulsing. "Oh my God, shit!" John said in total shock. He had no idea what the hell he was supposed to do. Sure, he had his degree in exercise physiology, but that did nothing to prepare him for this situation. He needed help. "Punk, get your ass over here," John thundered at Punk. He made sure that he was loud enough so that Punk could hear him over his music. John heard a couple of loud stomps before he looked up into Punk's red-rimmed eyes. He must have been asleep, too. "What the fuck do..." "Oh, shit! What the hell is wrong with him?" Punk said as he looked down at the co-pilot, who was now foaming at the mouth. "I don't know. Help me get him into a chair." Both men hauled the co-pilot off the floor and into a chair that was across the aisle from John's seat. John looked over at Punk, who had a very concerned look on his face. Punk turned his head and looked John in the eye. "I'm going to go check on the pilot and see if I can find out what's going wrong with him. He needs medical attention soon, so I hope there's someplace close where we can land." Punk left John with the sick, probably dying co-pilot. Mere seconds later, John heard Punk scream, "Oh, fuck!" from the cockpit. John left the co-pilot. There wasn't anything he could do for him, and ran into the cockpit. What he saw made liquid terror run down his spine. The pilot was already dead, and it looked like he'd died the same way the co-pilot was. He and Punk were on a tiny plane in the middle of the Pacific Ocean without anyone to fly said plane. How could this get any worse? The fates seemed to have heard John's thought, because at that moment an explosion went off toward the back of the plane. This caused the aircraft to violently tumble in the air. The plane started to nosedive because the autopilot had shut off or was broken by the explosion.
Even though that should be located in the front of the plane.
Yes. Acting quickly, Punk grabbed the controls and pulled up hard. The aircraft protested before righting itself. John sighed in relief that an imminent death had been temporarily averted. Punk turned to John with a terrified look on his face. "Go check on the co-pilot and I'll call for help." John turned and did as he was told. The co-pilot was already dead when John checked on him. It was so fucked. Going back into the cockpit, John saw Punk throw the radio headset away from him, looking John in the eye. Punk said, "We don't have any form of communication left. The explosion must have taken it out, and I'm losing power in both engines. We're not going to stay up for long. You best strap in and brace yourself."
How does Punk know this?
Good question. Before John even had a chance to react, there was another explosion, which sent the plane into barrel.
No barrel!
Oh.
John was not
Button.
and the chair Punk was sitting in. He had hit his head on the way down, and the last image he'd seen before blacking out was Punk struggling to regain control of the aircraft. John had never seen him so afraid before. His eyes were wide and he was gritting his teeth. John's last thought was that he wished he could make all his fears go away. The first thing John noticed when he came to was that he was wet. The sun was also bright behind his eyelids, and it made his head hurt even worse. Did he get drunk? Did he get drunk last night? John opened his eyes, and as soon as he saw his surroundings, it all came back to him. The place, as the writer put it, had crashed. That was obvious, but how had he survived? John noticed that the water...
I think that meant to say the plane.
Meant to say the plane, saying the misspelled, so... John noticed that the water was tinged with pink around him. Placing 2 fingers on the spot on his head that hurt the most, John pulled them away and saw there was blood on them. But not enough to make the water pink. Punk. Where was Punk? John thought to himself. John had come to facing the passenger area of the aircraft, so he had to turn his body in order to see the rest of the cockpit. Punk was in the seat John had last saw him, and his eyes weren't open. Jumping to his feet, John rushed over to Punk to check and see if he was still alive. John's knees almost gave out from powerful relief when he felt Punk's carotid artery.
That was meant to say carotid.
No, carotid. It's carotid.
Carotid artery, but it's
carotid.
Carotid? Carotid artery? Okay.
The way it's spelled makes me think carotid.
No, there's an artery called the carotid artery in your neck.
Yes, I know that.
Then why did you say carotid? You are an idiot, Roxanne.
Anyway, the carotid artery pulse beneath his fingers. John sent up a silent prayer.
That's the way it was spelled, damn it.
No, it's not. It's spelled like carotid.
I thought it was misspelled as well, dude. Don't worry. John sent up a silent... I knew what it was on about. I just thought it was misspelled. John sent up a silent prayer, grateful that Punk was still with him. John checked Punk over, and that's when he noticed the source of all the blood. Punk had a huge gash on his left side that went diagonally from his belly button across his left hip and down to the middle of his outer thigh. Shit, John said before taking off his shirt and pressing it to the wound. He heard Punk moan in pain at the pressure. John knew that Punk had already lost a lot of blood from the look of the water around them, and he was losing more. He knew that if he couldn't stop the bleeding, Punk wouldn't survive. Don't you fucking die on me, Punk! I know you hate being around me, but I need you. John dissolved into tears as he applied more pressure to Punk's wound. I know you probably hate me right now for leaving you on a bit of a cliffhanger, but please review and tell me what you think. Is this a good idea or not? Try to stay cool. Heart and edges.
I think we need the next chapter. What do you got?
I have to say, this is actually a rather interesting story.
You want to hear the next chapter now or next time?
I'm voting for now. I don't know what Allie thinks. Allie, what do you think?
Either's fine.
What do you think, Roxanne?
Next time.
We got 2 for now, 1 for next time. You've been outvoted, boy. So, chapter 2. I was so blown away by all the feedback I received from the last chapter. I never expected so many reviews, alerts, and faves. I noticed a lot of new reviewers and followers, so welcome to the madness. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy this chapter too. Heart and edges. Adding pressure to Punk's wound helped stop the bleeding. After a few minutes, the blood flow had slowed down, and John removed his shirt so he could get a better look at the wound. He had never seen a gash this long before, but luckily for Punk, it wasn't as deep as it could have been. John guessed that it was only about 3/4 of an inch deep. This meant that John could see the white bone of Punk's hip. He needed to get him out of this plane so he could treat the wound. John hesitated before leaving Punk in the cockpit. He was pretty sure that his blood had clotted enough that Punk wouldn't start bleeding again if there wasn't pressure on the wound. Just to be safe, though, John worked quickly. Opening the door of the plane, John looked out and took everything in. And we're on a beach of some island. It didn't look like there were any people here. The sand was pristine and lacked any tracks that would confirm human presence on the island. John didn't see any signs of civilization, like buildings or smoke either. This wasn't good. Pushing his fears to the back of his mind, John focused on the task at hand. He put down the stairs and made sure they were steady before going back to the cockpit to retrieve Punk. As carefully as he could, John picked Punk up into his arms and slowly walked out of the cockpit and toward the door. The stairs were tricky to navigate because they were so narrow. He would have helped if he could have put Punk over one or both of his shoulders, but he was afraid then it would cause the bleeding to start again. Upon reaching the ground, John looked around for someplace shaded to lay Punk down. There was a small tree on the beach that seemed like it would keep the sun off of him. So John walked over and gently placed Punk underneath it. John thought that Punk would have stirred by now, but he was still out cold. John checked the wound again to confirm that he hadn't begun to bleed again before going back to the plane for the first aid kit. He found it in one of the cabinets of the kitchenette. He didn't look at it.
Which was supposedly in the back of the plane, which blew up, but okay.
Yeah. He didn't look at it too long before going back to Punk. Kneeling down beside Punk, John thought about how he was going to go about this. Punk's wound was so long and straight from just below his belly button all the way across his hip.
Whoa, Jesus.
And partly down his thigh. He knew that he was going to have to take Punk's ripped jeans and underwear off. Oh dear God. But he cringed when he imagined Punk's reaction to this when he woke up. Maybe if he worked fast cleaning the wound and bandaging it, he would get Punk's suitcase from the plane and put him in a pair of shorts before he woke up. Deciding that would be the best course of action, John opened the first aid kit. All things considered, it was a nice first aid kit. It had a small pair of scissors, which John used to cut Punk's jean and underwear off. Sadly, laughing to himself, John mused that he had hoped seeing Punk naked for the first time had been a better situation. After that was done, John looked through the kit for something to clean Punk's wound out with. He found a bottle of antiseptic, but noticed that it was both open and past its use-by date. He couldn't trust it to be sterile. Shit, John said to himself before looking through the kit again to see if there was another bottle or something different he could use. There wasn't. He knew that he had to clean Punk's wound or he would get a horrible infection and possibly die, but he didn't have anything sterile to clean it with. John thought back to his Boy Scout survival training and what he had learned in his anatomy and physiology series that he had taken to college. The Boy Scout training didn't help at the moment, but he remembered something his anatomy professor had said during the lecture. John cringed when he realized what he was going to have to do, but it was better than just letting the wound fester and get infected.
Oh God, this is going exactly where I think this is.
His professor had said soldiers during World War II had done this on the battlefield, and it had saved lives, but it didn't make it any less disgusting to John. Unzipping his pants, John took himself out and tried to relax. It finally worked, and John used his own urine to clean Punk's wound out.
Never mind that would probably infect his wound.
Once that was done, John tucked himself back into his jeans and zipped them back up. Taking some antibacterial ointment, John put some into Punk's wound before using the dressings in the kit to cover the wound.
Why didn't you just use the antibacterial ointment?
After taping dressings into place, John decided that was all he could do for Punk for now. So he went back to the plane and started to salvage as much as he could. He first figured out how to open the baggage compartment under the plane, and then took his own and Punk's luggage out of the plane. He placed the bags next to Punk and then opened Punk's suitcase and looked for a pair of athletic shorts that he could easily slip onto him without disturbing the wound too much. He found a black pair that would work and he put them on Punk before going back to the plane. For the first time, John actually noticed how the plane was. It looked as if it had been landed instead of crashing. Sure, it was a crash landing, but it was a landing. The plane was a few yards from the ocean on the beach, but John could see that it had slid a ways before coming to a stop at its resting place. Did Punk land the plane? John decided that he would have to ask as soon as he woke up. The first thing John did before salvaging the rest of the things from the plane was bury both the pilot and co-pilot before they both started to stink and make he and Punk sick. He used a few large rocks to mark their graves and then worked on emptying the plane. He gathered everything that he had been in the kitchenette area. There was more alcohol than food and almost face-palmed himself when he realized he could have used the alcohol to clean Punk's wound. But then again, would Punk have alcohol or urine put on his body? After seeing Punk's reaction to Jericho dumping Jack Daniels all over him, John thought that Punk would prefer what he had done.
Really?
There wasn't much in the way of food. Yeah. There wasn't much in the way of food, just packs of trail mix and crackers, but no meals or anything substantial like that. He did find 2 dozen bottles of water, which he could make last for a week or two between he and Punk. John found about 15 pillows and blankets, which would probably be very helpful. That was all that was in the plane, but it was so much better than nothing. After placing his finding around Punk, John checked on him and saw that he was still passed out. Not wanting to sit and be still, John went exploring the area near the beach. That's when he found a better shelter than the plane. He almost didn't spot it. There was so much foliage that had grown up around it. It was a small cabin, probably from the World War II era. Luckily, the inside of the cabin looked just as it did around 70 years ago. There was 2 cots, a table, 2 chairs, a wood stove, pots, pans, a broken radio, blankets, an axe, and a rifle. John thanked his lucky stars. All he had to worry about now was finding food and a fresh water source. The gun would hopefully make it easier to get food as long as there were animals on the island. John quickly walked back to the beach. Punk was still passed out, so he picked him up, as he had earlier, and carried him to the cabin and laid him down on one of the cots. John then made his trips until everything he had salvaged from the plane was softly put away into the cabin. Grabbing the gun and sitting down at the table, excuse me, John checked the gun over to make sure it still worked. It was in amazing condition, but needed a good cleaning. John looked around until he found a cleaning kit, and then carefully started cleaning the gun. After he was done, he put some ammunition in his pocket, and then left the cabin to find water and maybe food along the way. After walking around for about half an hour, John heard running water. He followed the sound until he came upon a small waterfall and pond. Boy Scout training had told him that running water was usually safe as long as it was fresh. Kneeling down, John sampled the water and found it was safe for them to drink. John walked back to the cabin to check out Punk. He was just stirring when John entered the cabin, so he sat down and waited for Punk to come to. Punk opened his slowly before they were opened wide in surprise. Opened his eyes, I'm guessing, but he didn't write that. John watched as he tried to sit up, but he stopped from the sharp pain. John thought it was time to make his presence known. I was wondering when you'd finally come to, John said. Punk whipped his head side to side to look at John. What the hell happened? Punk said before trying to sit up again. It was hard to ignore the pain, but he managed it. John quickly got out of his seat to help Punk sit up. When Punk leveled a nasty look at him, John stopped. You're going to need help. You have a nasty gash, and I don't want it to reopen, John said before putting more pillows behind Punk so he's in a more upright position. John's words seemed to make everything come rushing back to Punk. Oh, we crashed. The windshield broke on impact, and part of it cut me. Punk lifted the blanket off of him and looked down. He saw the bandage by his belly button, but then it disappeared into his shorts. He pulled him down as far as he could without revealing his stuff to John, but the bandage still went on. Punk didn't want to think about who had patched him up and put him in these shorts. John broke the silence between them. Did you land the plane? It came down remarkably level. It probably saved our lives. Punk pulled his shorts back into place and then moved the blanket back on top of him before nodding to John. I have my pilot's license. I had many odd jobs to support myself while I was in the Indies, and one of them was crop dusting. Those were just prop planes, though. I had never flown a jet before, but I must have done okay since we're still in one piece. Punk noticed that he felt a little lightheaded. John seemed to notice because he removed some of the pillows behind Punk, so he was more horizontal. He thought that he should explain to Punk what he had done while he was passed out, since Punk had done the same for him. You had lost a lot of blood by the time I woke up, and you were losing more. It took a while to stop the blood, but it finally did. I had to cut off your jeans to clean and dress your wound. I salvaged what I could from the plane, but we have clothes, water, shelter, and some other stuff. But I gotta say that we are some lucky sons of bitches. We were lucky to survive the crash. Then so many resources to live on is pretty insane. Punk was fading fast. He was so tired he couldn't remember being able to sleep this much his entire life. Luck is for losers, Cena.
I'm glad we broke the Taco Bell plane.
Was all Punk was able to say before he slipped into sleep. John smiled at him before he shook his head. He didn't care what Punk thought. He'd never heard of people surviving a crash over the Pacific in that small of a plane. And then they had all the resources to live on while they waited for help to come. That sparked something in John. Their plane should have landed hours ago in Japan, so people would soon start looking for them. Needed to do something so they would be able to see that they were on this island. John looked outside.
Besides the fucking plane that's crashed outside.
John looked outside, but they saw that the sky was already darkening outside in the dark ether. Wait, what? Darkening? Oh, John knew that they wouldn't search for them in the dark, and John didn't want to be in the dark either. He didn't know what kind of trouble lurked in the night on this island, but he didn't want to find out either. Deciding to make some sort of sign tomorrow, John took off his dirty jeans and then lay down on the other cot. He put a pillow behind his head and brought the blanket up to his waist before slinging his left arm behind his head. This was the first day and night of their isolated island life. John wondered how many more days they'd have to stay on this island before being rescued while he was falling asleep. Even though it was toward the beginning of the story, I'm sure some of you are still thinking, oh my god, John peed on Punk. I know, it's really gross, but you gotta do what you gotta do when you're on a deserted island. Urine is actually sterile, and soldiers did clean wounds in the field by peeing on each other. I hope you enjoyed this gross first aid techniques aside. Please review and tell me what you thought about this chapter. Hard to nidges.
Well, I'm sure they did that during World War II, but here's the other thing. I'm sorry, I have a hard time. He might be right on this, but I have a hard time believing that you can sterilize something with urine.
While you can sterilize it using the base ammonia, there's still a lot of contaminants in it.
Yeah, it's like... Yeah.
So that was Lost, the first 2 chapters. I'll be giving more chapters as these episodes go on. And I gotta say, for a slash fic, what it might become a slash fic, this has got some good descriptive writing.
I kind of like the writing. I kind of want to read what happens next.
Well, I'll give you what happens next time, but that was Lost.
Where's the smoke monster, damn it?
Well, so far, we've learned that Cena really likes Punk's ass.
And Punk used to crop dust. I mean, I'm glad they explained why Punk could pilot the plane, but couldn't he have piloted the plane further than this? Or oh wait, no, there was explosions. Never mind.
I'll give you a teaser for Chapter 3 by reading the beginning part of the author's notes. Just a teaser for Chapter 3. I own absolutely nothing. If I did, there would be a Cena/Punk match on every single episode of Raw. I think Cena would have a blast showcasing Punk's abnormal flexibility. I just found out yesterday that John and his horrible wife have buried the hatchet, whatever that means. I'm confused whether or not they're ending their marriage and have just decided how much money Liz is getting, or if they're staying together. I guess it doesn't matter since John is blissfully unattached in the Slash world. That is, until we place Punk's pert ass under his nose. Cute, the semicolon 3. Anyhow, enjoy Chapter 3.
Oh.
So yeah, at some point, Punk's pert ass is going to be under Cena's nose.
Here's a question. I know Punk is probably very flexible considering he's a submissions expert. How the fuck is he gonna flex when he's got that kind of a wound? I'm hoping it takes place like weeks and weeks later. Otherwise, that makes no fucking sense.
Well, Chapter 3 is coming...
So, I've got to ask, in Chapter 3, does Cena lock him in the STF and fuck him in the ass?
I don't know. I'm leaving Chapter 3 as a complete surprise to me. I want this to be a shock to me for next time as much as it is to the people at home. But this is a surprisingly well-written piece of work. There's not many errors in this. And there's some descriptive words here that kind of surprised me being in a fan fiction like this. There's a lot of swearing in this, though, as well. That kind of takes back from that. And then there's Cena's obsession with Punk.
Honestly, besides the fact that it's Cena and Punk, it kind of reminds me of a professional romantic novel.
Yeah. So, you guys can bring the more comedic stuff to this table, but as the weeks go on and I give more chapters to this, I'll give the more, I guess, professional side to the mature writing on fanfiction.net, if you could call it that.
Until we get
this might sound stupid. I know that 50 Shades of Grey did that, but I wouldn't mind if they changed their names on that and made something else.
Yeah.
Allie, do you have something to finish off?
What?
Do you have anything to finish us off with?
The show.
I don't really have anything right now, but
Oh, that's right. We already did your pick. That was Ginger in the Kitchen.
it was Ginger in the Kitchen.
So yes, that was wrestling fanfic theater with Ginger in the Kitchen, Addicted, and Lost. The first two chapters of Lost. I'll be continuing with Lost story as we go on in the episodes, and I hope you all enjoy it. This is Riddler saying, I didn't know Punk had an ass to speak of, but apparently, according to this story, he does.
This is Slick Rob saying, "Oh hell no! Don't make me do the flippy-doos in bed."
How am I supposed to wrestle when Wade Barrett's raping me?
This is Rockden saying, I hope we get more disturbingly hilarious stuff.
Jeff the Magic Dragon lived by the sea.
Ali, would you like to take us out, and then we'll end?
Fuck.